Okay, this is Christopher from TechLogix Networks. I'm going to give a quick crash course on the WPCT-01 software. When you open it up, you'll have essentially, this is what the screen will look like. You've got under your menu bar, you've got File, System, Connection, and Help. One of the things to look for is first is the layout of the buttons. This corresponds to the physical hardware. As to whether you're going to orient the wall plate in a horizontal or vertical fashion. Right now you can see it's 4 across and 2 high, so that's actually going to be horizontal. So what we wanted to do, most of the time we're going to change it to vertical. So you go up to System and change V as vertical, H as horizontal, and then it's going to ask you what configuration you want the WPCT to be in. Basically, you want to check the manual for what these configurations mean. It can be anything from 3IR and 1RS-232 to the other way around. So for this, I'm just going to leave it as the default, which is 2 RS-232s and 2 IR ports. So once I've configured that for how I would like it, you'll see over here we've got a bunch of buttons. The white buttons refer to the actual hardware keys on the WPCT. The yellow buttons are basically not used the 33 and 34 are for I/O, which is not used on this model. And then there's a timer and then a start trigger. Most of those are not used very commonly either. ID number is if you're actually looping these devices together. And then the blue keys up here are what we call virtual keys, which can be added if you need to loop the devices together. We're going to skip that for the purposes of this crash course, just because that's sort of an advanced function. We're really going to just program the 4 keys here and some macros so that you get an idea of how that works. Okay, so we've got the panel set. On the right-hand side of the screen, we've got the action list and the event list. Those menus are persistent, although they will change depending upon which key you have selected. And then in the lower left, you have the event set. The event set is essentially a triggered command. So the first thing we want to do, like let's say I want a power on macro for button 1. That's the top left button. So I'll click on that. It'll bring up this dialog. You've got key action type. 99% of the time you're going to leave it on press. That means that when the button is pressed, it will trigger that action right then. You could change it to the actions being triggered on release, or you can make it a page command if it's really complex, or you can have it a toggle commands, but you can have it toggle commands just by being press command as well. So we're going to leave that there. LED brightness, that's fairly obvious. Key group, we're not going to assign that at this point. That's an advanced function. I will change the key name. You got just a couple of characters, so I'm going to call this on. And then essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one other button, and that will be, I'm going to call it off. And now what I haven't done by pressing set is actually add those to the action list. So basically when I press this, I need to add that key, and now you see the key 1 shows up in the action list. I'm going to add in this one as well. Now, so after that step, essentially what we'll do is we'll select one of these keys, and I'm going to then start programming some macros. The macro events show up in the event list, and the event list will change, and you'll see that depending upon which key is selected. So for key 1, I want it to be, that's going to be a power on command. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger a relay in this case, and then I think we'll add an RS-232 command and maybe an IR command on that, so you can see how those get programmed, since those are the most common. And then the same thing for the off command. So key 1 press. So one of the first things I'm going to do here is I'm going to give it a relay command. So what I want is a momentary relay. So I've got, I select relay. I can either select it from the top bar menu or from the left side menu. So port 1, so what I'll do is I'll trigger this relay action on, so that's going to close that relay. I'm going to add that. And then let's say it's a screen that would normally want a momentary action, not a latched action for this relay. So I'll give it a delay. I'm going to give it a half-second delay, and then I will turn that relay back off. Okay. Oh, the other thing I want to do is when someone presses this button, I want that button to turn on, and I want it to stay on until someone presses the off button. So I'm going to select LED here, and that button will be, I'm going to turn that button on, and then I'm going to select it, and I'm actually going to move it up the list so it doesn't wait that half second that the relay is waiting to turn off. So that's going to turn on right when they press the button. The other thing that I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to tell button 2 to turn off because it wouldn't be on and off at the same time. So I'll add that in. Okay. And while I'm thinking of it, I'm going to go, whoops, sorry. I'm going to go to button 2 and do the inverse. So I'll go to key 2, and you'll see that the event list is cleared because we haven't added any events to that action yet. So under the event list, I'm going to say button 2, it'll then be on, and button 1, sorry, I need to add that command in. So button 2 will be on, and I'm going to turn off button 1 because when it is off, we don't want button, you only want one button lit at one time. Okay, back to the, did it again. Back to the action list. So we've got key 1 press. So we've got the relay program, so that's going to be, that'll turn relay 1 on for a half second, which will trigger the screen to come down to its limit. Now I want to give it a, let's say I have a projector that has RS-232, and I want to trigger that projector to turn on. So we're back in key 1, that's our action, we're in the event list. I'm going to go to RS-232, and you can, if you're only putting in 1 or 2 commands here, you can just add them in at the bottom as an ASCII. So for example, I can set this to 9600 baud, so 8-bit data bits and 1 stop bit. Format ASCII, and then I'm just going to leave it as, well, we'll give it a carriage return. So I'm going to give it a name of projector on, and I check my protocol, and it says PWON is the power on command, and I will add that in. And it is reminding me that I do, because of the configuration that's up here, port 1 is an IR port, so it's not available to me. So I need to change the port to which port my RS-232 connection is. So port 2, add it in. So it's just going to send that command 1 time. Alternatively, and we'll do this for the off command, what you can do is we can make a library. So if you're going to reuse the same projector over and over again, you may want to add a library in so that it's essentially a driver for that projector. So what I'm going to do for this then is I'll say I'm going to edit the library. I'm going to give it a new library, and I'll say that this is a Epson projector for whatever reason. So that's the name now. So what I need to do is I have no functions. I need to assign a function. New function, I'll say power on. You know what, I'm going to shorten it up a little bit so it's easier to see later. Power on. And then I can put my command either in ASCII or hex in here. So that's PWON. And I'm going to save that. And I'm going to give it a new function, say power off. And I'm going to change that to OFF. Save edit. Now you can see I've got both of those commands programmed in here. Okay. So now what I could do is I can open that library, and you'll see that it saves into these libraries. So this is essentially on my desktop, or in a subfolder on my desktop, so I can get to it later. So you can save these wherever you want. I'm going to open that, and then I can ask it for the power off command for port 2. I'm going to just cycle it there. There we go. So you can see that that's the data it's going to send. I've just added that in. So since this is the off command, I'm also going to add that relay back in. So I'll do a relay. That was port 2 now. I'll turn that on and then give it a half-second delay. And then I'm going to go back to the relay, and then I'm going to turn it off again, so I'm not latching those relays. Okay. IR, so we'll give it, let's say we turn on, let's say we turn something else on with IR. IR is the same as RS-232, except you'll have a learning function. So the keypad itself has a little IR window on the bottom side of the chassis, so that you can point your IR remote at it and learn it in at that point. So the same thing, what we want to do is edit a library. I'm going to create a new library, and I'll just give it a name. So it's a JVC DVD player or something. So I'm going to give it a new function. So let's say that was a power toggle. Now I'm connected to this, but I'm not in the same room as the device, so I don't have a remote with me. So what you do is you'd hit, what I need to do is actually open the connection. And then didn't save it, so here we go. And so I'm learning a new function, and you'll see these are all Fs, which are essentially nulls. You can click on these functions and then click learn, and it'll change these nulls to the hex command, or the hex data that the IR excuse me, that the IR command holds. So I'm going to save that. And then I will add that. Oops, I didn't add that. Okay. So you'll see that IR command comes up as part of the macro. That's really the basics of how to get this thing programmed. There's a lot more information in the manual. It can be a little bit confusing because there are a lot of functions that this can do. But those are the basics of how to program the most common things. You can, play a little around with it a little bit yourself. I'm sure you'll find different ways to do things depending upon how you prefer to do it. And if you have any questions, you can just shoot us an email at support@tlnetworks.com. All right, thank you.